Well, hello, friends. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Reading Michael Jackson. I am your host, Lena, and I am so glad to be back here with you today. And I am so glad to be through June 25th. I'm recording this the day after because honestly, I couldn't record anything else until I was through that day. I don't know, I just couldn't. So very happy to be through that day. But before I get started with today's episode, I kind of just want to take a minute to comment on the Michael Jackson fandom. Like I've said before, if you're listening to this podcast, I assume you are a major fan of Michael, or you know me, but more than likely you're a big fan of Michael. So you are a part of this fandom I am commenting on. If somehow you stumbled upon this podcast without spending much time in the fandom online or observing it online, let me just share a little bit about it. So one thing I find absolutely extraordinary about this fandom is the passion and the passionate commitment to Michael Jackson and his legacy, and the amount of genuine human love guiding that. It's not just idolatry or, big fans of the music or whatever. I said this last week in one of the episodes, that it's about so much more than him as an artist. And that's so evident when you look at the people around the world who put their money, their time, their energy, their emotional well-being, into celebrating and remembering Michael. I cried a lot throughout the day on June 25th at random moments, but the first thing that actually broke me was actually really late at night on June 24th. I was looking through photos on Facebook of the various floral displays that fans from around the world had delivered to Forest Lawn, where Michael is buried. And I saw this one that was from Germany. And they said something, I don't remember exactly what they wrote, but, of course, something, we love you, Michael, we miss you, Michael. I think it was Denmark fans had this beautiful, portrait of Michael as a child that was made out of flowers. It was beautiful. And it said something like, we hope you found your Neverland, things like that. It was just really beautiful stuff. And I just started crying so much. And one of the reasons I was crying was I was thinking about how when Michael was alive and he would travel to different countries and different places, and fans would wait outside of his hotel room just to get, a glimpse of him or to see him wave from his window or whatever, like hundreds of fans, not just like 4 people, but like hundreds of people would wait. And the amount of love and loyalty these people had to them, and maybe it's you, I don't know, but the amount of love and loyalty, and then how desperately painful it must have been to the people who showed up for him in that way during his lifetime to lose him. And all that love is still there. That love doesn't go anywhere, And so for year after year, he may be gone 16 years, but fans show up year after year after year after year. They show up. They put together fundraising campaigns to donate monies to charities in his name. They put together campaigns to raise money for flowers and create these beautiful displays. Some fans create posters where they'll write the name of every single person who's donated so that that person feels connected and that they could do something, even if they live, across the globe from the United States. It's an incredible human effort of people from around the world who do not know each other coming together because there's this collective desire to commemorate him and this collective pain. I saw a post yesterday about how it was a day the entire world mourned for one person. That's completely true. And I think every Michael Jackson fan knows this, but, he very famously Google crashed the day that Michael Jackson died. You know, the global unity that his life and career and then ultimately his death created, I often wonder where that went. You know, all the people that were affected by his death in real time, you know, how many of them are still actively involved in the Michael fandom, actively, you know, stay connected to Michael? I just wonder about all of it. So I guess I've just been thinking about this. The global aspect of Michael's fandom is just outrageously impressive and unifying. And there's something really nice to me about the fact that I now regularly interact with people from around the world who I never would have met before if it weren't for this fandom. I never would have talked to people from different countries and different places who I had no way of meeting if it weren't for this unity. So even in Michael's death, he is still unifying people. And I just find that incredibly moving. And this podcast is an example of that. I was really happy to receive a lot of warm feedback about the June 25th episode. You know, I've talked before about how this podcast somehow has a very global reach, which I entirely credit to Michael Jackson being such a global artist. But still, I mean, it's a little podcast I create in my porch, you know? So it's very cool to know that only 30% or so of listeners are even from the United States where I live, mostly a global audience. And that's incredibly cool to me. So anyway, that is a long rambling intro. I guess I'm just still all up in my feelings about June 25th, but we will move on and move forward. So one final thing I wanted to say is that I have recently decided to start posting contact information. If you are somebody who wants to reach out to talk about an episode or follow up on anything, you may now, if you'd like to, email me at readingmichaeljackson@yahoo.com. I'd be happy to hear from anyone. I also would love suggestions for season 2 or, you know, anything you would like to see outside of Dancing the Dream once we move through this book, which we are over halfway through at this point. So again, the email address is readingmichaeljackson@yahoo.com, and you are more than welcome to reach out. So with all of that said, let's get into today's episode and the piece that we'll be reading for today. To be honest, I'm actually kind of excited about this piece because I remember being struck by it when I read it before, but I don't recall exactly what I took from it. So I'm looking forward to seeing where we end up in conversation. So with that said, get comfortable, get cozy, and join me for this reading of The Last Tear. The Last Tear. Your words stabbed my heart, and I cried tears of pain. Get out, I shouted. These are the last tears I'll ever cry for you. So you left. I waited hours, but you didn't return. That night by myself, I cried tears of frustration. I waited weeks, but you had nothing to say. Thinking of your voice, I cried tears of loneliness. I waited months, but you left no sign for me. In the depths of my heart, I cried tears of despair. How strange that all these tears could not wash away the hurt. Then, one thought of love pierced my bitterness. I remembered you in the sunlight with a smile as sweet as May wine. A tear of gratitude started to fall, and miraculously, you were back. Soft fingers touched my cheek, and you bent over for a kiss. Why have you come? I whispered. To wipe away your last tear, you replied. It was the one you saved for me. Well, this is kind of a difficult piece to me. It makes me laugh a little to say that because on one hand, it's pretty direct. We could think, okay, maybe this is about a relationship. It sounds like the kind of relationship you would have with a romantic partner. It sounds like a breakup to me. I think we could easily assume that's what it's about. But could it also be a metaphor? Who knows? So we don't know. We don't know. That's what all this is about in these conversations. We don't actually know. I am just going to think through and talk through what I think it could be, but we don't know. And that's the joy and the mystery of this book and of these pieces, right? They bring us closer to Michael while they also keep us at a distance. We could know his heart and his emotions more, but the intricacies of what he experienced are not always for us to know. And I think that's fair. So let's talk about it first. My initial read is that this is a romantic relationship that is breaking up and the pain associated with such a breakup. So your words stabbed my heart. I cried tears of pain. Get out. So, what did this woman say to Michael? What did you say to Michael? How could you? I don't understand it doesn't matter. She said something that hurt him, right? I think we agree. And he said, "These are the last tears I will cry for you." So this has been a difficult relationship for Michael. This has been someone who has hurt him, that he has long felt maybe not seen by in some way. But of course, as so many of us do, we shout in our anger and our pain, and then we desperately hope that person comes back. And they don't. Sometimes they don't. And it sounds like that's what happened here. This was a breaking point. He waited. She did not return. And he was by himself, crying tears of frustration. Oh, Michael. But she didn't come back. She had nothing to say. So the silence became bigger and bigger. Waited for months. There was no indication, no communication, nothing to know. Okay, are we ever going to get past this? And he despaired. But then there's this transition toward the end of the piece, about halfway through, about how the tears can't take away the pain, but a change in perspective did. So the mourning and the despair and the crying couldn't do anything to alleviate the pain he felt. But as soon as he remembered her and the warmth and the love that he felt for her, he was able to feel grateful rather than sad. I'll talk about the ending in a second, but I want to touch on this part a little bit more. Let's continue treating this for now like this is about a romantic relationship ending. The love you feel for a person doesn't have to die with that relationship ending. I mean, it's actually kind of sad in a way when you think about the great capacity for love so many of us carry inside of us, and how we direct so much of it toward often one person. And sometimes us directing our love toward that person results eventually in us being really harmed and really hurt. Sometimes it results in things hopefully going better, in a healthy, happy relationship. But either way, it becomes a huge part of us, and we grow to associate that love only with that person, as if that person should be credited for creating that capacity to love inside of you. But I think the way I see it is that an individual we connect to might help us unlock the love inside of us, but it doesn't create the love. The love comes from within us. The love is us, and it's shining out and we choose who to shine it upon. I mean, we don't always feel like we're making a choice, right? But we are the ones who get to direct the light, so to speak. If it's shining out from us, we direct where it lands on some level. At the very least, we direct where we keep it, where we focus it. But my point is that the love is inside of us no matter what. And to love, to be a person with a great capacity to love, is a beautiful thing, no matter how the actual dynamic of that love with another person may have harmed us. The fact that we're deeply loving and capable of deep love is such a beautiful thing, that it says so much about us as people, and it's a kind of a miraculous thing that humans come with this capacity. So I see when he has this tear of gratitude, it's like there's a gratitude for the love that was shared. When you can look back on a relationship that ended, and even if it ended horribly, look back on how it ended and be able to appreciate that there was love there, or that even if it was love that was mostly coming from you toward that person, appreciate that within yourself, you have that capacity for that love. I think that's really beautiful. And it's sort of how I take this, where the shift in perspective, like when you're going through the horrible breakup itself, love is the worst thing that could ever happen. I mean, it's the worst part of life because it keeps you chained to this pain that he describes. But then you get through that, and it's kind of like the clouds break and the sun starts to shine through, and you can feel love again. And you realize that that love comes from you, and that you are the love, and that the love you have is real, and that it's beautiful that you had it, even if it's not forever, because it's still forever in you. You know, that's the way that I think about that. But the ending gets me a little. So he says, "Why have you come?" After she appears to him again, touching his face. This woman, I tell you, what is wrong with her? Anyway, "Why have you come?" he asks. And she says, "To wipe away your last tear. It was the one you saved for me." And I guess I understand to wipe away your last tear. The memory, the positive memory and the positive feelings of a past love wipe away the pain, right? Like, you eventually get over the pain that you felt. And hopefully, depending on the relationship, depending on the person, there's something good to hold on to. And you can look back at it with a sense of, oh, you know, I feel a sense of love there still, or I feel a sense of gratitude for having experienced that. Ideally, we feel that way after a relationship ends. So the wiping away the last tear makes sense. But the line, "It was the one you saved for me," that catches me up a little bit. I guess the one you saved for me, the one he couldn't let go of, the one he was holding on to in hopes of something more, something else. I'm not sure. This is one of those times when after I record an episode, edit it, publish it, post it, sometimes I then am like, oh no, and I have a new idea and I can't do anything about it, and I have to leave you with my half idea that I've already put out there into the world. I wonder if it will make more sense to me with time, but that last line has always thrown me a little bit. I mean, I think the simplest understanding is the one you saved for me means you were holding on to this for me, and only when you saw me again, and by that I mean the positive vision of this woman rather than the negative, would you be able to let it go and release it. So, I mean, I don't know. I think it's very possible this is about a romantic relationship he had with a woman. I am desperate to know who was this woman, Michael? Who was she? Who was she? I really do want to know. I have my own theories. Because we can simply look at who did he dedicate songs to all the time, and who did he write liner notes to all the time, and whose name did he use in song titles? Whose name appears on a little placard and a little card in the Who Is It music video? I don't know. It starts with a D. As always, I tend to think a lot of Michael's heartbreaking songs are directed to and about Diana Ross, given the many obvious clues he has given us in his lifetime about it being about Diana Ross. But it turns out that's a controversial take. A lot of people don't agree with that. So I don't want to presume that I know, because Michael Jackson was a complicated man, and he was a deeply feeling, deeply sensitive man, but he was a man. And we don't know all the relationships he had. We don't know the women he may have been in love with, that he may have had secret relationships with that would have only enhanced the pain of going through them. I mean, I have heard so many rumors about different women in his life. Again, this could be a different episode. This could be a different thing entirely. But for example, Brenda Ritchie, who is Lionel Richie's ex-wife, was very close to Michael, and she commented on him being engaged in the early 90s. Now, who was she talking about? I have no idea. Liza Minnelli said something similar. Who was she talking about? We have no idea. So who knows? Who knows? It could be about any old woman. Whoever she is, she's a fool. And that's the last thing I'll say. Okay, moving away from women. I do think this could be about a woman, but would it be an episode of Reading Michael Jackson if I didn't bring God up? Probably not. So reading this, of course, sounds like a breakup, right? But if we read it as a metaphor, could we get a different meaning from it? So, your words stabbed my heart and cried tears of pain. That obviously sounds like someone is actually saying something to him. But could that be the relationship he had with God? The words and messages he was getting from God were hurting him. Sometimes, for a lot of people, I think religion or faith, spirituality, however you may view it, can tell us things about ourselves that are painful to be confronted with. Realities or truths that we don't want to face in ourselves as a possibility. Or perhaps they come with layers of hurtful things attached to them. Needless to say, I could see a metaphor there. Get out, I shouted. These are the last tears I'll cry for you. We know Michael had a complicated relationship with God and with faith and his religious affiliations. We know it was complicated. We know it was complicated around the time that he wrote and published this book, right? We know this about him. So it's not a stretch to think that as he was distancing himself from the Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, that perhaps he would be thinking through this metaphorically, like it is a relationship ending and he is finally saying goodbye. But then exactly like any other relationship, like I said before, you might scream and cry and then kind of miss them. And I think it's very reasonable that a person distancing themselves from God, from a community, from a religion, might feel anger and anguish and pain, but still ultimately wait for the voice to return, wait for the faith to return, wait for things to get easier and return to normal. You know, it's like anything else in that way. He describes waiting for weeks, waiting for months, and never hearing a voice, never seeing a sign, nothing. So again, imagine if you're Michael, your faith is breaking and you're just looking for a sign and hoping for a sign that you were wrong. And then that God or spiritual force or whatever is still there and you don't get it. It's devastating, right? When he gets into the next part then, this might feel even more like a stretch. He's describing seeing someone standing in the sunshine, their smile sweet and beautiful, soft fingers touching his cheek, receiving a kiss. These are all physical, tangible details, which obviously lean into this being a relationship, but they could also just be metaphors too. I mean, seeing the existence of God in the sunlight, for example, is something he's talked about before. Conversations with God is something he's referenced before. I have heard people describe connections to God feeling like a kiss from God. So, I mean, there's all these things where it could be metaphorical still. And by the ending, I almost see it like him coming full circle through a crisis of faith and returning to himself. Now, I want to be clear. The only real reason I'm suggesting this is because there have been so many thematic links to this already throughout the book. I am not a person who struggles to see that Michael could have been writing about women, about relationships, about heartbreak, about romantic love. I know there are people who tend to disregard that for some reason, despite him having an entire catalog of music like that. A lot of people diminish that, and I'm not quite sure why. So I don't suggest this alternative read of it being about a relationship with God because I somehow don't want to believe or don't believe it can be about a woman. I just really want to cover my bases. It's Michael Jackson. Who knows what he was talking about? I mean, I really believe, given everything we have seen in this book so far, there's an obvious, tangible relationship he feels to God, which is why I could see a piece like this being grounded in metaphor that articulates his challenge with that crisis of faith. But this may be the one and only, hint he is dropping about his own feelings of heartbreak, which I believe he poured into his music. And while on one hand, I do believe he was intentionally vague in order to avoid too much scrutiny or the women in his life being targeted in some kind of way by the media or maybe even fans, I don't know. I also think he was pretty open in his music about the pain he experienced. I mentioned the Who Is It music video earlier, but Who Is It as a song? My God. Oh my God. Have you ever heard a person in so much pain? I mean, his voice and his vocal delivery on Who Is It is excruciating. I have chills just talking about this. It's crazy. And if you haven't done this yet, I highly recommend going onto YouTube and looking up the a cappella tracks for Who Is It. Now, I highly recommend further that if you'd like to see a breakdown of Michael's vocals by a professional singer and singing coach, that you find Chris Lipe's channel. First name Chris, last name Lipe, Liepe. Chris Lipe makes a lot of amazing videos, but his series on Michael is incredible. And he has a video in which he listens to Michael's isolated vocals from Who Is It? And you can hear Michael literally crying while recording, like sniffling, crying, struggling emotionally. And we all know, Michael cried during his She's Out of My Life recording. He felt very deeply as a person. And we have no idea of knowing what internal conflicts he was facing, what his actual life romantically looked like. We have theories. We have our own ideas that we project onto Michael. We hear what other people said, but I'm sorry, unless I hear it from Michael and we're having a conversation privately in which he can reveal things to me that he does not have to filter, and then we can fall in love and, the rest is history. Unless that's happening, I don't believe anything. I just put all the pieces together and I try to figure it out and present my idea, and I'm open to new information all the time. So with that said, the last tier, this has gotten me in some kind of a mood because I'm torn up about the idea of a woman breaking his heart, but I'm also a little disappointed if it's a metaphor about God, because I want this to be some kind of revelation to us, that we can see a window into his experience of love and women and, the things he kind of kept quiet about in his life. Needless to say, I had fun with this episode and I hope you liked it too. I feel like this analysis, so to speak, was a little bit unhinged, but here we are. I enjoyed this. I thought it was really fun. And I'm sorry that it was fun at a time when Michael is crying. Michael, I'm sorry, but you would never have any more tears with me. I promise you. All right. I look forward to hearing what you think about this piece. If you do want to talk about it or anything else related to the Reading Michael Jackson podcast or even Michael himself, please don't hesitate to reach out to me at readingmichaeljackson@yahoo.com. Otherwise, I look forward to talking with you all again next week when we will move on and continue, and hopefully I won't be tempted to talk about my love for Michael as a woman and not just as a fan and intellectual. Sorry, I don't know what to tell you. This is what happens once you get through the very high and low moments of June 25th. You start over on June 26th as a lovesick little embarrassment to the world. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me today. I look forward to talking with you again next week. And until then, contemplate. What was this about? A woman? God? Something I haven't thought about? Let's think about it and revisit this again next week. Until then, have a wonderful week and weekend, and we'll talk soon.